Hello, welcome to the Ripples Podcast. If you're listening this, welcome to the YouTubes if you're watching this recording, and welcome to a dozen, 15 people who are hanging out with me live for another edition of our Patreon community's monthly Zoomy Zooms. The good folks who are members of the Patreon community, they pitch in a few bucks to help me cover all the costs of sending out ripples, printing up little goodies, mailing out things, and paying for my health insurance. Thank you to my Patreon peeps. And look for Ripples Guy on Patreon if you'd like to join us. And we are definitely going to follow our usual format. If you're familiar with our Ripples emails, which I suspect all of you are, we have a Pebble, Boulder, Ponder in our emails every week, two quotes and something to think about. And in these sessions, a Pebble is a resource, a Boulder is an activity that I'm using in my work or in my life. And then the Ponder is the meat of our content, which this month's meeting we called Cider for the Soul. And I'm following the format where I've collected a couple of ideas that I've been picked up along the road that I've been processing. And we will record this first part of it, and then we'll say goodbye to our podcast and video listeners, and we will have some informal chat and process time. Let's dive in, shall we? I will be sharing notes in the chat with the folks that are joining me live. And if you're watching this or listening to it, please look in the show notes where I will hopefully remember to put all the links I share. And with that, I have two pebbles for us today. I couldn't decide between the two, and I said I'm going to squeeze them both in. And one of them I mentioned in this week's Ripples. It was actually the source of the quote that we used as our pebble. And I heard a comedian quote share the quote in a documentary called Group Therapy that is on Amazon Prime right now. And it's a really fascinating setup where a number of stand-up comedians were brought together. Neil Patrick Harris was asked to facilitate the conversation, and they talked very openly, specifically around mental health challenges they're facing in their lives, and how it impacts their work, how it impacts their life. And it was so much vulnerability, so much sharing, so much hard stuff, and they were able to be very funny about it and very open about it. And it seemed like it really wasn't a group therapy session, but I found it therapeutic, and I was very honored that they felt so comfortable sharing. So I recommend that highly. And the other pebble that I wanted to share with you that I think is actually going to be the centerpiece of our October session. I've done a little pivot I will tell you about at the end of our time together today. But I recorded a conversation with a mentee slash colleague slash friend of mine, Rachel Finley Roach, about a conversation we had about a book that she recommended to me called Anatomy of Peace. And this is a link to the book and a link to the podcast where we talked about it. And I included some extra information in there as well. That's okay. And this book is a fictional book that it's a fable, I guess, a story. It's a story about a group of parents converging at a center in Arizona, where they're dropping off their troubled teens for this high adventure week, and they're asked to stick around and attend a couple sessions over 2 days to kind of give them this information. And that's the fictional setup for the people who wrote the book to unpack this concept they have about hearts at war versus hearts at peace. And it's a way of managing conflict, a way of looking at relationships, and a way of really looking at how you move through the world that I found very compelling. I found the ideas very compelling. The book, for some people, um, the story might get in the way because it is a little contrived, and at times you're supposed to not like the characters because they're being annoying early on, and then if you can stick with it, you get to see them grow and you get to see them have the insights. And there's some really nice payoffs, and I would even say some plot twists that I didn't see coming that made me really appreciate the fiction setup. I will also tell you there was part of me that was like, do the just get to the point. Tell us the point. Um, oh, we might want to get mute somebody. Um, thank you, EC. I forgot you're on it. So those are my two pebbles to offer you. And the boulder this week, this month a is actually a gratitude prompt um, that came out of an article I read. Let me go ahead and put the links in here. I'm sharing a bunch of things here that I'll explain. Uh, the article was a really New York Times, somebody sent it to me and they shared a gift link. So you should be able to get open the link, even if you don't have a subscription. And hopefully it will work. And it's about the value of writing handwritten thank you notes. And it reminded me of an activity that I've been doing a lot of my interpersonal skills presentations where I I have a table icebreaker question that I start off this segment and saying, if you were handed a card and an envelope to write a note of gratitude, a compliment, or a note of encouragement to someone in your life, who would you choose and why? And I use that as a table conversation starter. And then after that, I give them a card and an envelope, and I offer to mail the letter if they want to handwrite a note and address it right there. And I give them some time to do that. And then I show them a video that's from the Soul Pancake team called Street Compliments. That's a really adorable. I put the links in the chat. A really fun 3 minute video that has pairs of people, mother daughter, father daughter, father son, a couple friends, co-workers, newlyweds that take turns giving each other compliment, and it's a really interesting, fun, kind of upbeat video that people could use to be inspired while they were writing their note. And then I actually also shared with you another video that I've used in the past, not recently, that has some really compelling research, and it's presented in a fun way. They get a bunch of people to volunteer to get filmed where they write a long letter of appreciation to someone in their life, and and then what they don't know is after they write this letter, they are then challenged to call the person and read it to them. And it's based on research that they have compiled that suggests that when you do this, that not only is the person who receives the compliments or the kindness, uh, do they get a boost in happiness, but the biggest boost of happiness is actually the person who does the work. And interestingly, the more unhappy someone is, the bigger of a boost it actually gives to them. And so, this gratitude prompt that I really like is, tell me about a memorable moment of gratitude where you were either the giver or the receiver, or share a note of gratitude that you wished you'd previously shared with somebody. And the author of the article had posted this prompt in the comment section below right after the comment was posted online. So it actually wasn't even part of the article. But I just caught it that he had posted it, and then a bunch of people had responded with it, and I just thought it was a really powerful prompt. So that is my invitation to you to maybe take action on thinking of somebody that needs a thank you or an encouragement or a compliment, and follow through on sending it. And that is our boulder. So it's time to ponder some things with me. And I had forgotten until, so I have four things to share, four and a half things to share. The three has an A and B. Um, and The first one actually is from a
Okay.
article called "The Peril." Actually, it's from a podcast episode, and a podcast recommended to me called "No Small Endeavor." And this, I believe it was actually a Patreon peep that shared this with me because it was about specifically about time management and dealing with procrastination. And I highly recommend the entire episode. One kind of bonus is the podcast host. His voice sounds so much like Mr. Rogers that it's very easy to feel like you're spending time with Mr. Rogers, and his sort of approach is similar too. So that was kind of fun. Um, but there were just two pieces I wanted to pull out that were tiny little things. One of them was almost a tangent. And one of the things on procrastination is she has what the author of the person being interviewed is the author of this book, The Peril of Productivity and the Happiness of Tiny Experiments. And she was somebody who had worked in Google in a highly stressful, highly like a very important position, very highly sought after person, and had a health scare. And in the middle of it, a life risking scare. I can't remember the details. And in the middle of possibly dying, she was trying to figure out some work stuff that to make sure that that could be handled. And she noticed, oh, I think my priorities are off. And she ended up diving into some reading and research to reshape some of her priorities. And one of the things that little tidbits that I really liked, she talked about the triple check when you find yourself procrastinating, and it's going to tweak how I teach procrastination. She said when you notice you're procrastinating, to stop and ask yourself, where is this procrastination coming from? Is it coming from your head? Is it coming from your heart? Or is it coming from your hand? And she defined this as the head is coming from your head, meaning it's a thinking issue, some way you're thinking about the problem, or that you're overwhelmed, which is technically an emotion. But if you're like got so much going on, or there is something about the project that you're resisting, notice that. If it's a feeling, if it has to do with you don't think it's going to be fun, or you are afraid of it, that's a how you would address the procrastination is a little bit different. And then she said hands as a way to think of it's a doing issue. Either you literally don't know how to do it, and you haven't noticed that the reason you're putting off doing it is because there's an element of unknown to you that you don't actually know the correct process. And then a variation of that, if it's a really big project, like I need to do my taxes, that you haven't broken it down. You really don't know what that task, it's a little bit too big to conceptualize the act of doing it. And so you need to break it down so your hands know what they can get busy doing. And I thought that was an interesting question. And I told Jamie about it at breakfast the next day. Actually, the morning I listened to the podcast on my walk, I had breakfast with him. And later in the conversation, there was something that I wasn't doing. And he says, "Oh, are you procrastinating it? Is that coming from your head or heart, or your hands?" And it caught me off guard. And I thought about it, and an answer popped up, and I was like, "Oh, it's a head thing." And I sort of spilled out a couple thoughts, and I was like, "Oh, I just applied the thing I learned. Totally worth it." So that is one thing. And the second thing was her take about productivity. And she was talking about work setting. I think it applies in our lives, is that we spend a lot of effort teaching SMART goals, SMART as an acronym, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timed. And she says one of the challenges, we spend all this time developing good goals and then implementing them. And she said, I think a lot of real change doesn't happen that way. It actually happens more like the scientific method of smaller experiments where you have an idea about something and you test it and then you tweak it and you test it again. And she said, instead of deciding that you're going to write a book and you're going to do this, she's like, what if you have a tiny experiment saying, hey, I want to write something. How about if I say I'm going to write for an hour a day for 3 days next week and have this little experiment rather than it being a goal, rather than it being a task. I'm going to experiment with this and the playfulness of it, the this is just to see where it's going. It's not a strong commitment. Might get your head and your heart and your hands to buy into it a little bit more easily. And then at the end of the experiment, you say, okay, how did that experiment go? What worked? What didn't? What would I do differently next time? Do I want to have a different experiment to continue the process for next time? And I liked that. I liked the it. I think it resonates as someone who believes in the ongoing power of our small ripples. I think it resonated as a relatively small way to eventually have an ongoing and perhaps significant impact. That is number one. Number two, I titled Richness Beyond Joy and Meaning. And this is from, let's pull up a book. Nope. Let's pull up a Washington Post gift link. And we'll click on it too. Here's what science considers a path to the good life. And somebody was making a good, Richard Sima was the author of it. And he was talking about the fact that in general, when you look at research around what does it mean to have a good life and how does one live it, that largely it's focused on two large, sort of broad areas: joy, happiness being sort of a light version of deeper joy, and then the other one is meaning, having a meaningful life, what having purpose, feeling like your life matters, feeling like your work matters. And both of those things are commonly grouped together and saying, this is what a good life means. This is your way to have a life that feels good, that feels right for you. And he is suggesting that, based on some research that's recently been proposed, that there's a third way, and that's to have what the researchers call a psychologically rich life, and defined by having novel experiences, perspective shifting insights, and complexity. And then this is an important but also more discomfort and challenges in life than a happy life or a meaningful life. And so, as a pathway towards feeling like your life is good, this isn't the easiest way, and it's not the most comfortable way. But he makes a pretty compelling case that it is a satisfying life. And then again, I think you all know from having been a part of these that I tend to be drawn to these articles that say, and here's a couple of things to think about. And so this article, true to form, suggested there were four things that you could infuse into your life if you wanted to have a more psychologically rich life. Embracing play. And I was really struck by, not only is play fun, it tends to give us a chance to try new things. It gives us a chance to stretch ourselves a little bit and to take ourselves and life a little bit less seriously. To try to be game for things, to default to yes, to be willing to sample the buffet, to be willing to, if you're choosing between two things, to say, oh, why don't I go ahead and do the more novel one, the one that I've done less often, make the meal I make less regularly, and to make that more of a habit, to get out of your rut a little bit, and also to stumble into more things to add to your rut, to incorporate into your life. Embracing discomfort is one that is a little bit of a catch-22, because for most of us, we naturally resist discomfort. We're hardwired to avoid things that have a higher chance of killing us, hurting us, and things that we are familiar with, that we know are safer, are therefore going to be more attractive to us. And this is more than just taking risks. This is really embracing discomfort as part of the process of growing and learning, as part of the process of being fully human. some of you remember several months ago we were talking about what I used to call taking cold showers, and I think it is more. I have found it more useful to describe them as taking showers that I don't use hot water, because that sounds less uncomfortable. And I have stuck with that habit. I There are days, there are sometimes weeks that where I'm not feeling it, but my default is to get into the shower and not use any hot water. And there are several health benefits. Supposedly, there is some pretty impressive research around lifting depression and some mental health benefits. I and that's all great. I feel like, well, that's not going to hurt. But I will tell you what has kept me coming back to it is getting comfortable with discomfort. Is because even though I've been doing this, I think for over a year now, I think it's been a year and a half. Um, my system still is not convinced this is going to be a thing that I like doing, and so I every morning have this moment of this is going to be terrible, and my brain says it's going to be uncomfortable. And now I can say, and that's going to be good for me. And that's one of the reasons we're doing it is to remember discomfort usually doesn't last as long. I tend to count out loud the seconds, 1,000, 2, 1,000. And I will tell you that most mornings by 18, the water does no longer feels cold or uncomfortable to me. It feels neutral. Now, I do have a theory. I will tell you, I have a theory that as the ground temperature drops, the water stays colder for like cold for longer. That even though I'm not adding any hot water from the hot water heater, um, that I think it could be my mind, but I think the water stays much colder longer in the winter months because I've been noticing it's more like 25 or 26 lately that before the water starts to feel neutral on my skin. But maybe it's just my skin taking a little bit longer to neutralize and to accept it. And so remembering that discomfort is often a temporary state, and something that I experience as uncomfortable is not going to continue to feel uncomfortable. And even though it does every day, it turns out it's this much of my day, and then I feel great. And I'm kind of hanging on to this activity now more out of like, look, I can do this. I can handle discomfort. And I have used it many times when I'm about to do something uncomfortable to say, remember, showers. I started to say cold showers. Showers with no hot water, I can handle them. And the fourth piece is journaling and recording your experiences. Not something that I have been really strong at doing. I haven't been a natural diary keeper, journal keeper. But the reflection that comes when you jot down what happened or something that you were grateful for the day or something you learned from the day, that those kind of habits tend to lend themselves not only to growth, but also to appreciation because I think it's a combination. It ends up being gratitude inducing when we reflect. And then it also has this component of allowing us to learn from our adventures in life. So that is number two, richness beyond joy and meaning. Let me sip water and move to number three is a two-parter, Dan Harris, 10% Happier podcast. Two different episodes that I recommend. I had pulled something out from it last time. And when I went to kind of put that on the we did this list, I noticed a little other thing from that podcast that that I hadn't shared with you. And I would like to share with you. So let me first. This is the podcast episode. Your brain is suggestible. Um, and two things that were talked about here that I didn't talk about last time. One is the placebo effect. We are all familiar, I think, with the idea of a placebo, a sugar pill, or something that doesn't actually have scientific has something that is supposed to make things better in certain percentage of trials. People still feel better, get better, do better. with physical health, mental health, all kinds of things. And what has happened with placebo research is instead of it just being we gave somebody this drug and we gave somebody a placebo to test the effectiveness of the drug we're testing or the activity we're testing, um, there is now a whole body of research that says how can we tap into the fact that a pretty large percentage of people in certain things get better when you offer them a placebo. And here's what's interesting. Even when you say this is a placebo, this is a sugar pill, does not have any activity that's actually going to help change your body chemistry, but still I want you to take it and and see if it helps your blood pressure go down or your blood sugar. And what they're finding is that even when you tell somebody it's a placebo, some people are still helped. And they're very curious as to why and what could this be. And one of the theories that this guy was presenting, Dr. Amir Raz, was in the conversation with Dan Harris, is he says you're basically reminding yourself that you're doing something to make a difference, that you're wanting to make a difference. And so the idea is that that is enough to make a difference. When you do this hand gesture, and you are basically reminding your system, I want to get better, and uh, it is possible that I could get better. And some people actually get better. And so I'm wondering, is there something going on? Now, is this a cure-all? Of course not. Can it go like, can you positively think cancer away? Of course not. I shouldn't even be saying anything like that blanket statement. Things are complicated. Our bodies are complicated. Our brains are complicated. And how is it that you might play around with this, with maybe something small in your life? Is there something going on that you wish you were thinking about feeling differently and say, I am going to go take this lifesaver, and this lifesaver is going to save my life. It's going to help me in some small way. Remember that I'm not a doctor or a counselor, so do not ignore your doctor's advice or your counselor's advice. Placebo. And then, in a related topic about how suggestible your brain is, they were talking about helping people who have racing thoughts, who have anxiety, who have OCD, helping them learn how to manage their thoughts and their feels. And an activity that they started doing in research that seemed to work really well is to tell people, imagine that you have a screen on your forehead that broadcasts what you think about people. You are about to sit down with someone, and then they would tell them some stuff about this person that was designed to make them not like this person or cautious of this person. And they said, but remember, your thoughts are going to get broadcast on the screen, so try not to have those thoughts. And of course, there was no actual screen that could push the thoughts out. What they found is that with a little bit of practice, it takes practice, people got to where they could self-report. I was able to successfully divert my attention, my focus away from these thoughts that you had planted in my head. And they said, yeah, that. You can do that about other things in your brain with practice. And so helping people stumble upon the power that they have not yet developed in managing their thoughts and in managing their feels is leading the way to actually people strengthening their capacity to direct their thinking. Even though for so many of us, there are moments where we don't get to control our initial thoughts, our initial feelings. And I liked the idea of thinking there is a skill component to this that we can get better with practice. I like it. And then 3B is also from Dan Harris, The Science of Burnout. Oh, Kristin Neff, Dr. Neff, fabulous, fabulous researcher, person, writer. Let me put that link in. And interestingly, the what I what I loved came from a question that Dan saying that he poses. What do I need to be fully resourced and fortified to be effective, to enjoy my life? And I found that question to be very compelling. And if I worded it just differently for the purposes of you listening or watching right now, and I said, what are some things that you need to be fully resourced and fortified to be effective and to enjoy life? I like the question because fully resourced resonates with me, um, and fortified. I really like the idea of um, putting things inside me to help build me up to maximize my potential. And then to be effective and to enjoy life. I've my own personal mission statement is uses those two terms, helping people be increase their effectiveness and their enjoyment. And I think that's a powerful combo. And so I'll ask you, if you right now were going to make a list of things that you need in order to be fully resourced and fortified to be both effective in your work and life and also to enjoy it. What things might you add to your list, and how could you go about getting them a little bit more? Where would you go? And I just think, what a great prompt. And with that, we'll move to our final piece. Oh, we're doing great on time, by the way. We're doing good. Gold stars to Paul. So here is a word for you: Fauxstalgia, and the term ghost longing. I was having a conversation with a friend, and she said, I'm going to read this to you. She kind of, as part of what she was saying, she paused and she goes, wait, is there a word? What is it called when you miss something that you never had? And I said, I don't know, but I'm sure there's a word. And earlier in our conversation, we had a conversation about AI and large language models, LLMs. So I said, this might be one of those things where let me ask Google, but then I'm going to ask ChatGPT as well. And because I've had several conversations with ChatGPT and it's been getting to know me a little bit, it sort of, we have a banter. And Chat pointed me to a term, anemoia, um, that was actually a term coined by John Koenig in the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And several months ago, you all may remember that we happened upon that book, and set of videos, the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And this guy coined a whole bunch of words for experiences and ideas and things that he said that he hasn't found words for, in the English language. And but the word, um, is actually, it means nostalgia for a time that you never lived in. So it's like related, but not exactly on. And then another thing they found was Sehnsucht, a German word, and he described, the Chat GPT described it, which captures a deep, wistful yearning for something unattainable. And then it said, well, would you like me to spin some phrases for you? And I was like, yes, please. And it came up with a whole bunch, and I've put a link to the chat if you'd like to visit it. But I will tell you that, for my friend that I was having the conversation with, she immediately resonated with the term ghost longing, which chat described as a yearning for something that exists only as a whisper. And I really, really resonated with the term Fauxstalgia, taking the word faux, like faux fur, F-A-U-X, and nostalgia, nostalgia without the memories. And that just it helped me actually understand the point she was making, the experience she was having, and it made me feel like this word needs to exist in the world. And I put it on my topic list for a conversation I was having with my friend Pidge that you all have been getting to know lately. She and I had one of our legendary 5-hour chats last weekend, and I had just put the term on our on a shared Apple note that we used to say, "Hey, this is some things I hope we talk about today." And she immediately was like, "I want to know what this word is," and she understood. She understood it's like she basically had a sense of it, and she was already thinking about ways in which she had experienced Fauxstalgia. And so I offer you this term, this concept, and ask you the next time that you are experiencing grief, and then when you think about it, you're like, I'm actually grieving something that didn't happen or that doesn't exist. It's an idea of something. Um, Please feel free to use this term and think of me and my friend and Pidge and chat. And that concludes a whole bunch of things that I am excited to share with you. And I will talk to the folks that are here offline a little bit about our next month's program, but I had an idea that I thought we were going in, but Tuesday night's presentation shifted that. So I hope everyone who is part of the Patreon program that hears this will keep watch on their emails because I have something really fun, I think, for October. And I think we're going to open it up widely. So if you're a Ripples reader, look in the next couple issues of Ripples that you should see me unpack some ideas that we will then have a session about and we will hang out. And then blink, and it will be Halloween, and then it will be time for us to think about gratitude and Thanksgiving and wrapping up the year. But until that happens, I want to thank you for watching this. I want to thank you for listening to this. And I want to thank you for every single time that you are aware of the ongoing power of the smallest actions, the smallest thoughts, and the smallest feelings that you have. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.